Good morning, boys and girls. Today I'm going to read you a story called Fireflies. The story and the pictures were done by Julie Brinkalow. On a summer evening, I looked up from dinner through the open window into the backyard. It was growing dark. My treehouse was a black shape up in the tree, and I wouldn't go up there now. But something flickered there. A moment. I looked and then it was gone. It flickered again over near the fence. Fireflies. Don't let your dinner get cold, said Mama. I forked the meat and corn and potatoes into my mouth. Please, may I go out? The fireflies. Mama smiled and Daddy nodded. Go ahead, they said. I ran from the table down to the cellar to find a jar. I knew where to look, right behind the stairs. The jars were dusty and I polished one clean on my shirt. Then I ran back up, 2 steps at a time. Holes I remembered so they can breathe. And as quietly as I could, so she wouldn't catch me dulling them, I poked holes into the top of the jar with Mama's scissors. The screen door banged behind me as I ran from the house. If someone said, "Don't slam it," I wasn't listening. I called to my friends in the street, "Fireflies!" But they had come before me with polished jars and others were coming behind. So all the kids are gathering to find some fireflies. The sky was darker now. My ears rang with crickets and my eyes stung from staring too long. I blinked hard as I watched them. Fireflies! Blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making white patterns in the dark. We ran like crazy barefoot in the grass. Catch them, we cried, gasping at the lights. Suddenly, a voice called out from above the others, "I caught one!" And it was my own. I thrust my hand onto the jar and spread it open. The jar glowed like moonlight, and I held it in my hands. I felt a tremble of joy and shouted, "I can catch hundreds!" When we dashed about, waving our hands in the sky, up in the air like nets, catching 2, 10, hundreds of fireflies, thrusting them into jars, waving our hands for more. Then someone called from our house, "It's time to come in now." And others called from their houses, and it was over. My friends took jars of fireflies to different homes. I climbed the stairs to my room and set the jar on a table by my bed. Mama kissed me and turned out the light. "I caught hundreds," I said. Daddy came from the hallway. "See you later, alligator." "After a while, crocodile," I called back. I caught hundreds of fireflies. In the dark, I watched the fireflies from my bed. They blinked off and on, and the jar glowed like moonlight. But it was not the same. The fireflies beat their wings against the glass and fell to the bottom and lay there. In this picture, you can really see that he has hundreds. The light in the jar turned yellow, like a flashlight left on too long. I tried to swallow, but something in my throat would not go down. And the light grew dimmer, green, like moonlight under the water. I shut my eyes tight and put the pillow over my head. They were my fireflies. I caught them. They made moonlight in my jar, but the jar was nearly dark. I flung off the covers, I went to the window, opened the jar, and aimed it at the stars. Fly! He's letting them all go. Then the jar began to glow, green, then gold, and white as the moon, and the fireflies poured out into the night. Fireflies! Blinked on, blinked off, dipping low, soaring high above the head, making circles around the moon, like stars dancing. I held the jar, dark and empty, in my hands. The moonlight and the fireflies swam in my tears, but I could feel myself smiling. So boys and girls, with this story, I want you to think about, it's showing, not necessarily telling. So when you're writing for your realistic fiction piece, I want you to think about giving details to show and just not tell the story, but let that reader picture in their head what it is you're talking about. Like for instance, when they said we dashed about waving our hands in the sky, he didn't just walk out, and he talked about motion and what he was doing with his hands. My ears rang with crickets and my eyes stung from staring too long. Can you picture that in your head? Can you see what he's talking about? I can see, you know, like I can visualize his ears, like hearing the noise of nature outside because it's quiet and they're all gathering the fireflies. I can imagine that his eyes would be bothering him from staring too long. He talked about polished jars. He could have just said that I'm going down to get a jar, but he added a little more detail. So I want you to think about, when you do your writing, what details you can really add and descriptive language that you can add to help the reader really visualize what it is that you're talking about. So go ahead, if you need to listen to it again, and really be aware of some of those showing and not telling. Thanks for watching my book.